The Jungle Book, Mowgli's Great Story, written by Suzanne Francis, illustrated by the Disney Storybook art team. As the moon rose in the sky, Aquila finished his nightly story. Mowgli and his wolf brothers burst into applause. Aquila was the pack's best storyteller. He wove tales of humor and suspense that kept Mowgli and the cubs hanging on his every word. "Please, Aquila," Mowgli begged, "won't you tell us one more?" Aquila smiled kindly at the pack. "Not tonight," he replied. "It's past your bedtime." Sighing, Mowgli and the rest of the cubs scampered off to bed, chattering about the story Aquila had told them. The next day, Bagheera brought exciting news to the wolf pack. "In 3 sunsets, there will be a jungle story contest," he announced. "What's that?" asked Mowgli, excited. "It is a chance for the jungle animals to gather and share their best story," Bagheera explained. "You have to enter, Aquila," said Mowgli's older wolf brother, Paju. Aquila shook his head and smiled. Not this time, young ones," he said. "It is about time you all learn how to tell stories of your own." Soon, word of the contest spread through the jungle. Everywhere Mowgli looked, he saw animals practicing their tales. Mowgli wanted to share a great story. He wanted it to be funny, scary, mysterious, and full of adventure and bravery. But the more Mowgli thought about it, the sadder he became. He couldn't seem to come up with a story to tell. But Bagheera could see that Mowgli was struggling. "Let's go for a walk," he said. "Perhaps you will find a story in the jungle." "How am I going to find my story out here?" Mowgli asked, confused. "Many of the best stories come from your own life," Bagheera explained. "Look around you for ideas." As the friends walked through the jungle, Mowgli paid close attention to everything they passed. He heard a woodpecker tapping on a tree. He could tell a story about a bird with a big beak. But then what? He saw a turtle paddling through a small river and wondered if he could tell a tale about a brave turtle. But what would happen? "Bagheera, I still can't think of anything," Mowgli said. "Like a tree waiting to blossom, you must have patience," said Bagheera calmly. Mowgli groaned and kicked his foot into the dirt. He wondered if he would ever come up with an idea. One day, on the day of the contest, everyone was excited about their stories. "I'm going to get really quiet at the scary parts and use my spooky voice so everyone gets the shivers," the Wolf Cub Gray said. "Just wait until you hear my ending," Pashu said excitedly. Mowgli sat quietly. He still hadn't come up with a story. As the sun began to sink in the sky, the jungle animals gathered together to share their tales. Bagheera began the contest with a fable about patience. Mowgli could tell the story was directed at him, but hearing it didn't make him feel any better about not having his own story to share. When Bagheera finished his tale, he invited the smallest wolf onto the stage. Gray did an excellent job of telling his story. His spooky voice worked well, and everyone jumped at the right parts. Next, a monkey shared a silly story about a banana and a prickly pear. The animals laughed until their bellies ached. Pashu shared his story next. As he had predicted, everyone was completely surprised by the ending. As the animals continued sharing their tales, Mowgli grew more and more nervous. What story was he going to tell? Suddenly, Mowgli heard a strange noise coming from the deep in the jungle. "Maybe that will lead me to my story," he thought, looking around to make sure no one was watching. He quietly slipped away to investigate the sound. Back at the storytelling contest, a long green snake dropped down from his hiding place, high in the tree. It was Kaa, the python. "I, too, have a story to share," Kai hissed. "Now, wait just a minute," Bagheera said, moving toward the snake. But before Bagheera could take another step, Kai's eyes grew wide, hypnotizing the panther. One by one, everyone fell silent as they stared at the panther. Meanwhile, as Mowgli headed farther into the jungle, he heard the sound again. It was coming from beneath a rock. What could be under there? Mowgli wondered, imagining a surprise ending to his story. But when he lifted the rock, he found a bug. The sound had nothing but a trapped clicking beetle. Another boring story, Mowgli thought. With a heavy sigh, he scooted the bug along with his finger and set the rock back down. As he headed back toward the contest, Mowgli tried to think of a way to change the story. Maybe instead of a beetle, it's a fierce tiger, he thought. He tried to work the tale out in his mind, but he couldn't get it quite right. Suddenly, Mowgli realized that the jungle had grown oddly quiet. Pushing his way through a bush, he saw that everyone at the contest was sitting completely still. Mowgli looked toward the stage. Kaa was hanging down from a tree. He had all the jungle animals hypnotized. Mowgli knew he had to act fast. He quietly snuck up the tree and twisted a vine around Kaa's coils. Then he jumped down, rustling the leaves as he landed. "Who is that?" Kaa yelled, whipping his head around as he tried to move. The vine tugged him into the opposite direction and snapped him back. His head smacked right into the tree. "My sinuses!" he yelped. Mowgli ran around, clapping his hands together loudly to wake the other animals. "What's going on?" Bagheera asked Mowgli sleepily. "Kaa," said Mowgli, pointing to the tree. "Kaa," Bagheera's voice boomed. Bagheera, Kaa hissed. "I was just leaving." Kaa tried to slither away, but he was still tangled in the vine. With one last big tug, his coils snapped free, and he got twisted up like a pretzel. As Kaa slowly squirmed back into the jungle bush, Mowgli chuckled to himself. At last he had found his story. Mowgli stepped onto the stage and took a deep breath. "Once there was a man cub," he began. Mowgli's story was everything he had wanted it to be. Funny, scary, mysterious, and full of adventure and bravery. And that was just what he needed to win the contest. The end.